What is up, everybody? We are live from the International Center of the Nothing to See Here, folks. It's a nice, bright, and sunny day, and it's nice to be with you guys. Sorry, no intro. I know how many people come here looking just for the intros, but it was a busy week of running around in circles, chasing my own tail, which, I frequently am chasing my own tail, but this was more tail chasing than I normally do. It took a lot of work to be able to get out here to the International Center of Nothing to See Here, folks. That took most of my production week was to be able to make these arrangements and to get out here so that I could be live from the island and just pick up the vibes of the International Center of Nothing to See Here, folks. And so, no intro, but we'll be back, regularly scheduled from the studio next week, and we will have one for you. I already discovered I got to go surfing with Heather and hit my head in the sand again because I'm back to being enraged. And lucky for you guys, you get to hear some of the things that enraged me. And here's first on my list. We'll see how I already see John Popick in the chat. I'll see what you guys think about this one. But I think we need a new tort law. Is it a tort law? We'll discover whether or not this is a tort law. But I think there should be a new law that, here's the purest example of this. If you've ever been on a one-way street and then someone pulls over to the side of the one-way street, double parking a car, barely leaving enough space for you to slide through. I feel like if you're in that situation and now you're passing by the car that's letting you know, hey, go by me, and you're sitting there and you're like, I don't think I have enough space to go by. And they're like, go, go, go. And they're not guiding you through. If you hit something, it should be that person's fault. Keeps happening at my building where people are taking up my space and then looking at me like I'm the asshole. So for one, there's this Ukrainian guy, nice dude, doesn't speak a word of English, chain smokes cigarettes. And I used to spend a fair amount of time hanging out in my parking spot. I would stand on my trunk. I would take phone calls. I'd drink beers down there. And then this guy started doing that, and that's fine. I just ceded the space to him. I'm not going to start a war with the Ukrainians. It's just like, all right, this guy's hanging out in the space. It's fine. I have an apartment. I don't need to be the parking lot hangout guy. This guy can be the parking lot hangout guy. Oh, wait, before I get to this guy, the most awkward thing last night, my building's getting out of control. I pulled into my parking space, and there's this, I'm going to say 16-year-olds. I was on a phone call in my car, pulling into my space, looking to continue my work phone call, and these two kids are just making out, and they did not stop. They did not move. And then once again, you're like, all right, I guess I won't sit in my parking spot and have my phone call in the space that I pay for because you're making out right there, and I feel like the weirdo. But how do you put the shame back? Should I just honk my horn at them? Should I be the old guy honking the horn? Or this guy, he smokes cigarettes in my space, and then I just don't want to hit him. And then he starts standing there. He's like, I just feel like if you hit something and someone else puts you in the situation where you don't feel comfortable going because they didn't leave you enough space, can we all agree? Because can you imagine, if you didn't leave enough space and then the car goes by and then you just end up scraping the car on the other side or taking out the window on the other side, that guy's never going to get out of his car and just go, oh, yeah, that was my bad. I'll cover that. All right, here's the next one. We need a shot clock at coffee stations. And what I mean by that is it's the same gripe that I just have with humanity of people have no spatial awareness or consideration for other human beings. And then sometimes you get people and they pour their cup of coffee, and then instead of even shifting over to the sugar section, it's like they're playing basketball and they start boxing you out, where not only do they put in their one thing of sugar, they start having a phone call, they start doing all the arrangements, they start pouring out a little bit of coffee, they start doing it like they got a whole ritual of concoctions, like they're sitting at their own kitchen table and they've got the perfect way that they want to stir their sugar. And then at some point, they always look around. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, well, you just stood at the public coffee station of a busy place for 5 minutes preparing this like it's your own space. It's like I was saying on the previous episode, please close the urine door. What we need is people like me that just roam the earth, and we observe all of these horrible minor infractions and figure out ways to fix them. And a simple way to fix it would just be a shot clock over the coffee station where you get 30 seconds, and that's your space. And you can enjoy it for the 30 seconds. But then after that, maybe if you're still standing in there, we actually have the referee throw a towel, get the big buzzer that goes off, and then take away the person's cup of coffee. They don't get it anymore. All right, just to even my distribution of rage, because, I was yelling about TSA and the way they operate, and the Denver airport is a particularly ridiculous airport, and it was a very ridiculous airport in a way, unlike what I was bashing kind of the Atlanta airport people for being in the last episode, where you check in and are these people auditioning to be drill sergeants? Is that what's going on at TSA? Is that they would all like to go to the military and they would like to be drill sergeants? And so step one to becoming a drill sergeant is that you have to go work at the TSA and showcase your skills at yelling people at the airport. And so these people were just, it's like they were competing with each other for who could be louder at rattling off every instruction in your face. Like you're checking into boot camp. You know, it's early morning, you're hungover, you're just trying to catch your flight. You paid for the flight. Not only do you pay for the flight, but go look at your flight receipt, and you're paying it, I think it's like $30 every time you go. $30 goes to TSA so that they can check your asshole, make sure you take off your shoes, yell at you over your laptop. But it was just straight up just the drill sergeant energy of laptops in the thing. I want your laptop in the thing. Shoes off. All the shoes got to be off. It's going through the machine. Got to take the computer out. Computer's got to be out. Going into the... It's like, I get it. You don't have to yell at me. This is we can figure this one out. A simple sign. I'm just advocating for better signage like this. You see? You see how simple of a sign this is? It lets you know exactly where I am. The International Center of Nothing to See Here, folks. It lets you know everything that you need to know about the location where I currently am. Anyways, incredible week at Denver Comedy Works. You know, I remember back in the day doing comedy, you'd get off stage, it felt like you did all the cocaine, you're on top of the world, you had a giant erection, and you're like, let's go seize the day. And I have a lot of fun doing stand-up. I have a lot of fun hanging out on the porch. We have a good time hanging out late at night, drinking beers, smoking cigarettes, eating sandwiches. It's a good time. But I rarely get that after a show, just explosive feeling. Last time I had it was when I did, we did the live part of the problem at Skankfest, and that was a particular thrill. The lineup was great, the show was great, but I'm a huge Nick DiPaolo fan. It was just so much fun podcasting with that guy. It was just a huge thrill. And the last time was I got on stage at the Denver Comedy Works. Host was crushing. I'd heard so much about the spot, and we're going to talk comedy here for a minute. Typically speaking, I try and just do my new stuff as much as possible as I can weasel it in. This time, I usually do half-hour opening for Dave. This time, they only allotted me 20 minutes. I went the other way, where I was like, oh, you know what? This is going to be fun. Let me see if I can cut down my 45 to 20 and, like, just do the bangers and rip. And I don't normally do it that way. I normally am a little bit more experimental. I like to take the opportunity. I make sure I'm doing well, but I like to make sure I'm working on things. But this time I was like, let's just do the bangers. And from that first joke I told, just the explosion of laughter in that room, the way it's seated, just the way it comes at you was a huge thrill. So, I mean, that was a career highlight. That was so much fun playing the Denver Comedy Works. And then this week I'm opening up for Dave out in Cleveland. That's the best food of any comedy club you're ever going to see. And then back to Porches, which I will read off some porches. We got a lot of porches going on. The next run is basically not actually doing Pittsburgh, but I'm taking a drive basically up in that direction. So we're going to be back out in the woods of West Virginia, which I got to update and make sure I have the right address this time because that was funny last year. Doylestown, PA, Brewston Mills, West Virginia, Johnston, PA, White Bear Lake, Minnesota, Memphis, Tennessee, Bon Aqua, Tennessee. That's a classic. That might be my 5th time doing Andrews Farm. Chattanooga, Tennessee, Baldwin, Missouri, Pekin, Indiana, Cincinnati, Ohio, back to outside Cleveland, Philly, and then back to Myersville for the Smokeout Bug Out. We're bringing out back the Smokeout Bug Out. If I had to pick one porch that you should come and visit, and you can set up a tent, you can camp at this one. I think there's a $25 fee so that we can cover more porta potties if a lot of people choose to camp. But if you were going to travel to a porch, Max's is the porch to travel to. We drink all night at the private bar Pubcas, and you get a concert from the Shedcast boys. You get the stand-up show. I'm doing all new stuff, and then you're going to get the Smokeout Bug Out. It's like a mini festival. All right, let's take a couple of comments. Actually, no, let's introduce what I'm going to get into in the episode, and then we'll take some comments. I feel like we're just back on the seesaw of Donald Trump. And listen, I do complain quite a bit on the show, and I do find in the 10 years of podcasting that the way that he just jumps between topics and changes stances or changes even just the tariff level or changes what he's saying, I do find him to be the most difficult to cover and follow. So let's just start with, I'm just laying out very quickly. We're going to be getting into the Powell Schiff corruption charges, the latest from Ukraine, the Epstein files, the tariffs, and then the Russian tariffs. And I do just want to remind the listeners to the show of my general stance of Donald Trump, which includes that some of the things that I criticize him for or that I don't agree with is he's taking very aggressive bets. It's not the way that I would play poker. It's not the gambles that I would make, but I can't say that he won't win. So, for example, on the tariff things, I don't really even know where we're at. He sent out letters. There aren't finished deals. He basically just established new tariff levels. From what I understand, the first time he tried to do so, they basically said he didn't have the authority to do one blanket tariff for everybody. So he had to send out individual letters to all these other countries. It seems to me like he's switching gears, that he more is just interested in having tariffs than just getting concessions. And now we're going to have to see how that plays out. Are other countries going to come back to the table? Are they going to be collectively more aggressive and start jacking up their tariffs? And we're going to have a tariff war? Are they going to see if Donald Trump backs down, kind of like he did with China when they said, we're not going to send you guys the rare earth minerals? So we're kind of at the beginning of it. At the moment, people are starting to say, hey, look, prices aren't going up. We're making money off the thing. So, I think at this point, we're going to have to kind of see how it plays out. But we will get into some of the details of where we are with the tariffs. Also, Ukraine war, I feel like we're at a point now, and the problem is I don't know who's at fault. I would have blamed Zelensky of saying Zelensky has to decide, hey, you guys can keep the territories that you already conquered. NATO's not coming in here, and that's the end of this thing. And then you've got the problem of, will Putin take that deal, or is he concerned that once Donald Trump's out of office, even if he makes that deal with the Donald Trump administration, if the next administration's going to come in and basically just nix that and going back to trying to fight Putin? Now, at the moment, I don't remember Zelensky ever accepting that they would just give up the territories that have been lost, admit that Crimea is Russia at this point. I'm not saying that Crimea always was Russia. I'm just saying be pragmatic and let's call it a quits and quit having these people in a mess that's going to lead to more death or possibly escalate to a bigger war. I'm not saying it's just noble or the best opportunity. I just think it's the most pragmatic. It doesn't march us towards war. It doesn't have more people with death. And I don't think you're getting those territories back from Putin. So I just think it's the best option on the table. And so it seemed that at one point Donald Trump was trying to play the leverage card against Zelensky of, we're not going to support you, to kind of force him into that deal. Seemingly, then he got the minerals deal, which I guess could be a way to at least fund the war so that Americans are not out of pocket for the war. But I guess in talking to Putin, he's annoyed enough by Putin now that he's switching gears and going, I want to ramp up and punish Putin. Which seems to just be an escalation towards more war. But I don't actually know who's at fault here because, like I said, it's the seesaw of Donald Trump. We had moved on from Ukraine a month ago. I don't remember seeing any reporting that Zelensky was actually ready to accept that territories were going to be Russian. And so I would think until that happens, Zelensky's at fault for this war continuing. But maybe that happened. I missed that storyline. Maybe behind closed doors, Zelensky's ready to play ball and Russia's just not coming to the table at all because they're looking to take more areas that are juicy, or it's the Scott Harden fallacy of government that now they need to take even more territory to protect the territory that they've already taken, and so now they got increasingly more border to protect the more territories that they take. Like I said, I'm lost. I know you guys come here for reliable coverage, and that's why I do the research, and I will show up to locations like the International Center of Nothing to See Here, folks. But I'm just reiterating aggressive gambles by Donald Trump. It's aggressive gambles on the tariffs, and now it's aggressive gambles on the Ukraine situation, where it looks like he now wants to channel to Putin that we are going to support Ukraine, and we are going to make this more costly for you guys to continue this war. I did look this up, and I think thus far Russia has spent double what we have in this war. I believe it's like $500 billion to $250 billion. Maybe I should have written down that number, and perhaps Twitter Grok was not even accurate on that. But Russia is a smaller GDP. So, maybe in the war of attrition, Russia actually can't continue to afford this. But that does not seem to be the picture here. And so it seems like that war that he said, I'll have it done from day one, never would have happened if I was there. Like, it's the same as with the Epstein storyline, which he's definitely wrong on. New boss, same as the old boss. Support Israel, support Ukraine. Worse on financial policy, better on the border. All right, and then I guess we can let's start the show talking about the situation with Powell. But before we do, once again, tickets at porchstore.com, and of course, thank you to YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo and loyal sponsor of the Run Your Mouth podcast. If you are a fan of Kratom, you should be buying it from YoKratom.com, the only place in the entire world where you can get an entire kilo of Kratom for just $60. And, you know, they don't care about tariffs. They don't care about inflation. They care about you and making sure that if you're a fan of Kratom, you can get it for the best price possible. All right, let's take some comments from the section. It's going wild out here. John Popick, Robbie, we all know you stayed in your car and stared at the teenagers for way too long. I did not. That is fake news. I, if anything, just tried to give them a little bit of a rage look of like, what are you kids doing? Just go make out somewhere. There's a park. Parks are for making out as a teenager. I wasn't cool enough to do that, but I've seen enough movies and heard enough other people talk about it. My parking spot is the wrong place for it. I'm not trying to find your parents. I'm not trying to tell you that you guys, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting involved in teenage makeout sessions. I do not care. I just don't think it needs to be in my parking spot while I'm sitting there. I think that's reasonable. Catching 45. Will you be in Tacoma with Dave later this year? Absolutely. I mean, it kind of gets ridiculous to talk about how much you like every club, but that's like a small room. Assuming we're doing the same room, it was like a small 100-seater, and it was fun to do. Jacob Maslin, he might not have campaigned on Epstein, but he really made it sound like he was going to make a breakthrough. What a disappointment. I agree 100%. Jose Gallison saying bigly. All right. And then man with attitude, how's the island weather? You know, it's nice out here. It's a little bit hot. It does kind of smell like kids, which is weird. And once again, I'm not into that. But, you know, otherwise, it's pretty nice out here. I mean, it's an expensive island. It took me a long time to get here. Definitely has nice island views. And luckily, they've got good signage, so you know exactly where you are and where you're going. All right, last comment, and then let's get into the show. Thoughts on Trump putting things in motion to remove birthright citizenship? I don't have a problem with necessarily getting rid of birthright citizenship. I've said this before. Once again, you know, Donald Trump likes to say he's here with the common sense. I like to think I also have a little bit of common sense, a little bit of pragmatism. Sometimes people are like, well, what's your solution? I've already said I think we should make the Mexicans that have come in over the last couple of years second-class citizens, where as long as they will sign away their rights to citizenship or benefits, and they just want, if that's their best option, you got a choice, which is leave or you can stay, maybe become a citizen down the line if the voting public wants to figure out a pathway to that. But in the meantime, some of them probably have to be deported, and the ones that benefit our economy, which I know you guys think none of them do. You think that all of them are taking American jobs and pushing down wages, and so therefore they all have to go. I think the easier solution is maybe some of them should be allowed to stay, work here, pay taxes, and that their kids should not be citizens and that they can't become citizens. And then you might say, but some Democrat might come in along the line and just make all of them citizens, which I agree is a risk, but I think would be the most pragmatic solution at the moment. But I agree with you. I agree with that thought in my head that just popped up of, but then what about if a Democrat just comes back in and makes them all citizens? But in the meantime, getting rid of birthright citizenship for people that snuck into the country, I've said it, you shouldn't be allowed to just run over the goal line of our border, pump out a kid like you're spiking a football, and now that's an American citizen. I don't think that that's a great system. All right, let's get into the show. Here we go. Starting off with the storyline. Give me a second. I forgot to share this. Starting off with the storyline of Powell. And I think that this somewhat speaks to the problem of overlooking the Epstein situation. Now, I think everyone's best bet with Epstein is that he was probably an intelligence asset, but that's everyone's just best guess. We don't actually know. Who knows? Maybe if we could see what Donald Trump could see and they were totally transparent, we would go that this was all a bullshit story the entire time and we've been suckered by our imaginations and Twitter. But they're not doing a great job of selling the fact that everything we've thought about this guy was ridiculous. And there'd be a lot of things that need to be explained. To recap, some of the biggest is what was the chain of custody with that safe that came out of his apartment? Why is it that he was only arrested after they won the Freedom of Information Act? And why were there statements to the prosecutor about him being an intelligence asset? And then I'm sure in the chat, you guys can list off some of the other really flagrant ones that someone should have to answer for. And what would have been nice about the Epstein storyline is that if there is massive blackmailing of public officials so that private interests, other companies, the deep state, or our CIA can basically work against the interests of the American people and ensure that their agenda is being accomplished of either more war or funding for private activities or other countries that the voting public does not want, then we should delve into that story as aggressively as possible and try and cleanse it out of the system. And particularly if they were using kids in order to accomplish this agenda, something that nobody isn't disgusted by, it means it's our best opportunity to possibly cleanse the intelligence agencies and private interests working against all of us, and that we've got this illusion of that we vote for things and that the public officials will represent us. But the reality is that they have blackmail on some of these individuals, and so they will never serve our interest, and they will always be beholden to the blackmail. And so this would have been a good opportunity to actually potentially cleanse that out if it exists. But Donald Trump, he wants to move on from it. And so now you've got what is, I mean, this is exactly what the theater of politics is that Donald Trump wants to get rid of Jerome Powell. The reason he wants to get rid of Jerome Powell is because he's a low interest rate guy. I like low interest rates. This guy, he wants high interest rates. And so he wants to get rid of Jerome Powell. Big old dummy. Big old dummy, doesn't understand the tariffs that I'm doing, wants to wait and see if it's going to push up prices before he lowers the interest rates. But what we need is to be able to spend more money. And why would the government have to spend more to fund its debts? I would like to have more money that I can spend now and pretend like that will never cause inflation or never be a problem for a future generation. And this guy's getting in the way of my agenda of American greatness, because we could be borrowing and spending even more money, and he's making it more costly for me to do so. That's actually in Donald Trump's words, and I will play that clip momentarily. But now you've got Donald Trump, and he wants to get rid of Jerome Powell. And if you've ever read The Creature from Jekyll Island, if you've ever read Ron Paul's and the Fed, if you've ever listened to this show, you've ever listened to Part of the Problem podcast, the Fed is the most brilliant scam that's ever existed. The Fed represents private interests. It makes profits, or maybe at this point losses, because it pays off of the bank reserves. But it's basically just a big scam so that bankers can have endless amounts of money, take really risky bets, continue fractional reserve banking, printing money out of nowhere, and never paying the price when it blows up. Because fractional reserve banking, and you guys can go read, Murray Rothbard's got this incredible book, A History of Money and Banking in the United States of America. I believe that's a book. It's this big green book, and there might be 200 pages about how every single time in the United States a bank engaged in fractional reserve banking, it failed. And then basically the government coming along and then just keep on combining them, backing them, and just pyramiding up the Ponzi scheme of fractional reserve banking not working all the way to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve just exists as one big giant scam to support the monetary elite and make sure that they can take risky bets and be bailed out, and to prop up their fractional reserve banking system, which steals all of our wealth through inflation. All right. Now, let's say you don't want to accept that that's the scam of the Federal Reserve. Then the next scam of the Federal Reserve is that it's an entire industry of people who make a lot of money to seemingly never quite getting things right. I don't know. Maybe someone wants to come on and they can make the case that banker bailouts and that the setting of interest rates, that they've done a great job. But I remember years of Powell saying, what was it? We just have momentary inflation or something, or it's passing inflation. And they go, oh, yeah, it's real inflation. All right, we're going to work harder to hit our 2% target. And then also, just if you understand that the inflation rate is the price of money, and so they're just distorting the entire financial system and the bets that people should be able to take and propping up asset bubbles and creating bubbles. But listen, what I'm trying to say here is that the entire existence of the transitory inflation, thank you, the entire Federal Reserve System is a giant scam. And it's kind of hilarious that amongst all the things that you could delve into of the scam of the Federal Reserve, why the Federal Reserve shouldn't exist, how the Federal Reserve is stealing all of our money, you're going to get the guy who's in charge of the Fed in trouble for essentially them spending too much money on an expansion. Now, I'm not pro-government making big expansions. I don't know how nice most government offices are. I don't know if the Federal Reserve spending $2 billion is insane relative to what other buildings are spending. I'm not into government spending, nor do I think that these people should have lavish offices. But essentially what happened is they called him out for having incredibly lavish offices and expanding. I think it was $2 billion. It must be on the New York Fed, including private dining rooms, including a rooftop garden, living the good lifestyle. And they called him out on it, and he basically said, that's not happening. And then they pulled up the records of when that was planned and to say, hey, you're lying to us. It was happening. And then he said, no, we scaled it down from there. And by the way, there's not supposed to be oversight for us on these things, but we actually voluntarily did the oversight. The point is, this would be of all the scandals that you could delve into at the Federal Reserve and the way that they're stealing our money to help out the financial elites, taking this guy down who you would not look at this expansion if it wasn't for the fact that you want to get rid of him over him not willing to lower the inflation rates. This is the same thing as when they went after Donald Trump for, his mortgage scam that nobody lost out on and no one would look at. This is the way that you abuse enforcing corruption, is that you just go after single individuals when they're not in line with the regime. And so this is classic, it's the theater of government where you find this thing, you're like, oh, you know what? I can sell this to the public. Why do these people have a $2 billion expansion? And then you ask them that in front of the TV camera. And how often do people lie in front of the TV camera, in front of Congress? Once again, I'm not into this. I'm not into lying in front of Congress when you're on the record. That's the game that you play, is you bring these people in, you try and bust them lying, and then you can get them in trouble. But go after myocarditis for sneaking 1,000 people over the border. Go after Fauci for the entire COVID regime. But instead, it's because this guy's at odds with the president over the interest rate, and Donald Trump's not allowed to just fire, or he might be able to try it, but he's not supposed to just fire the guy unless it's for cause. It's a goofy system where you can appoint the guy and you can hand select a person who you think will represent the interest that you're looking for, but you're not allowed to fire him once he's in the position, but you can fire him for cause. And so now they're exploring the storyline of the $2 billion expansion, and that might be the reason that he's fired. So Trump says Fed renovation issue might be fireable for Powell. And here's the video of him saying so. And I believe this is it. Let's watch it.
Lower the rates. And I tried being.
Oh, no, this was Donald Trump on the interest rates. It might be the next video. I thought I had a video of him. Of course, it's always right in front of the helicopter. I don't know why that's where they take their press conferences. But he did say he is considering it. But here's Donald Trump talking about why he thinks Powell is such an idiot. And let's give this a listen.
Nice to the guy. It doesn't help. He's like a knucklehead. No, he's a knucklehead. A stupid guy. He really is. Each point, think of this, each point costs us $360 billion. Billion. 1 point, $360 billion. 2 points, you got $700 billion. And we're way high. We're at 450 or 425, 450. And how do you go borrow money at 1% when the Fed has you at 450? And, it's not that easy. I get angry at them. Why are we paying so much? Because he's got you up at this number. And we should always be the lowest. Now that we're doing great, we have no inflation. Think of it. Our stock market hit record highs. Everything's hitting a record high. We're really running good with no inflation. And we should be at 1%.
All right. You heard it directly from Donald Trump. Why would we spend more to finance our debt if we can be spending less? And firstly, I guess that assumes that at a 1% interest rate, people are still just going to endlessly buy up our debt, and that the government's not going to have to buy up our debt, and that if we continue to do so, there won't be an inflationary issue down the time or credit asset bubbles created. But you heard it directly from Donald Trump. It's just, I would like to spend more money, and the Fed is getting in the way of my ability to spend more money because I should be able to borrow money at lower rates, and I can't do it if the Fed's setting the interest rate at 4.5% to 5.5%. And I mean, there's some common sense there. Government wants to spend money. Why would it spend more money for it? Of course, I don't actually think there is endless demand. I even think that's why Donald Trump's creating his own mess by challenging BRICS and being like, hey, you guys don't even try and start other currencies because we need everybody basically storing our currency all the time so we can rob more people via inflation. But if you're brilliant, Donald Trump, his perspective is there's no concern with inflation. There's no concern of credit asset bubbles. And so what we need is the Fed to just come. Why not just have negative interest rates or just have money be free? But that's where Donald Trump is. Powell is getting in the way of my incredible plan for the United States of America because we could have lower interest rates, which means I could be spending more free money. I mean, Donald Trump, maybe he's a modern monetary theory guy. Debt doesn't matter. Spend it all. And now you got your two Kevins, vitally central bank. And basically, I think they're just, I think the job is who can better lick Donald Trump's ass and be like, I like the interest rate even lower than this guy. It's going to be whoever can better sell lower interest rates is going to be the next guy at the Federal Reserve. All right, now let's move on to Epstein. Before we do, let's thank another sponsor, Sheath Underwear. You can go to sheath.com, use promo code RYM, you get yourself 20% off. Greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. I've got the classic Reds on today, and I got to hang out with Bobby the Bank. We were out in Denver, Colorado. We came out to the early Thursday show. We had a good old time. We did not make it to the Manitou Incline because I didn't have a car. Then I tracked down a car. I did run some stairs at Red Rocks, and I am still feeling it in my legs. I had a nice time. And luckily, I had the sheath on, so I didn't chafe my legs. Chafe my legs. I'm not shaving my legs, everybody. Don't think I said shave my legs. There's no leg shaving going on over here. I shave my head, shave my pubes, occasionally my back. All the other body hair's staying, all right? I ain't some goofball who's shaving his legs, all right? I want to make that very clear. But if you guys want the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls, man, you want to be out there in the hot, sweaty summer months, living your life chafe-free, you go to sheath.com, use promo code RYM, you get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. All right, now let's dive into the Epstein story here. And before we do, I missed a couple points that I wanted to make on the last episode. And we'll do this quickly because I know Twitter's probably handled all these topics. But first is in the trying to sell us on the nothing to see here, folks. The idea that you would go, hey, all the cameras were out and this one camera angle, it's just 1 minute that it was out for. And so you guys can all see with your own eyes that that's his cell. We don't actually see that he's in the cell, but he's locked in the cell and nobody could have had access because we got this one camera angle with 1 minute missing. And like, we've all seen enough movies where if you're sitting down, you're robbing the bank. Oh, look, these cameras, they all reset at 12 o'clock. So we've got from 12 to 12:01 to clear this one angle. In other words, they had a full minute by their own storyline of why we should all believe them. And by the way, the whole storyline is not just whether or not Epstein did or didn't kill himself, or as my friend from Retro Pizza in Queens, he was the first one to say it on the night that Epstein killed himself. He goes, that guy's back in Israel. Firstly, great pizza and great conspiracy theories from my friend over at Retro Pizza in Astoria, Queens. You can start a conversation with him about anything, as long as you catch him outside while he's smoking cigarettes and not spinning some pizza in there. But he said it night off. He was like, dude, that guy's Mossad, and he's back. He's back in Israel. They pulled him right out of there. But just, I mean, the offensiveness to our intelligence to go, hey, take our word for us, and here's the security footage. Yeah, all the cameras are out except for this one camera, and it's definitely out for a minute, which is all the amount of time that you would need to get that done. You can clear that camera angle in under a minute. That's first. And now, secondly, there's some new storyline that they actually edited the footage and they mashed together two different cameras, and there's actually 3 minutes missing, but I don't know anything about metadata. And the story, at least in the official way that they told it to us, was ridiculous enough. All right. One other problem with the Epstein thing that I missed on the last one is, and I've complained about this before, but you look at the Donald Trump storyline of when they went after him for Russia collusion. And then they get up there at the end of the whole thing and they say, we don't even have enough evidence to proceed, but that doesn't mean that he's off the hook. And then people like me were going, look, they don't even have enough evidence for a court case. That's the end of this thing. But then the Durham investigation comes out and he finds no fault in anybody. And you're like, all right, I guess the conclusion of government investigations doesn't really mean anything because you have to just kind of pick your narrative. There's not one clear standard there of government actually conducted an investigation, and here's how they concluded, and so therefore vindicated or off the hook. You kind of have to pick based off of what makes sense to you. So on the Donald Trump one, when he was off the hook, I went, look, proof. They found nothing. But then on the Durham one, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the guy that protects the deep state. Or on this one, if you just kind of go with government investigations, you go, hey, the attorney general, they looked into this, and now they're throwing it out. And of course, all of us are on the sideline and going, bullshit, you guys clearly want to cover this up. And now as to why Donald Trump wants to cover it up, I, in my opinion, it's just the guy's in power now, and it's the easier route. It's just, listen, do you want to leave office and having all of government go after you forever? Or is it just easier once you're actually in power to play ball with the deep state? Does someone from the CIA just sit you down and explain to you the importance of the agency and that you do not want to undermine all of their efforts and work by letting the world know that they potentially engage in these kind of activities to make sure that their agenda can continue? And by the way, if we were willing to do this, think about what we're going to do to you. I think Donald Trump, in his wheeling and dealings, he'll cut deals with the deep state. You know, that's the best deal he's got on the table. The guy likes cutting deals. It's why he, I think, finally conceded the election was so that I always forget this storyline, but something happened with McConnell, and so he folded on something. So I think Donald Trump will play ball, and I think it's just easier to try and move on from this storyline than it is to pursue it, and so he's walking away from it. The other thing is there were clearly pictures of him with Epstein. I'm going to guess that Donald Trump didn't do any of the really horrible stuff, but I think that was part of the racket of Epstein was that once you hung out and then you found out about the horrible stuff, you were just kind of a little bit guilty by association. I'm sure there were plenty of people that even went to this island and then they're like, ah, shit, why did I come here? And then they sat in the room, waited for the flight home, looked at the floor and said, fuck, I shouldn't have came to this place. I'm sure that there were some of those individuals. And then they didn't say anything about it because they know they can't take on the power structure. And now they're like, fuck, if I get a call from Epstein, I got to take that fucking call. Shit, I fucked up. I should not have gone there. They told me that the Clintons and I could get a Nobel Peace Prize. And I just played Xbox in my room and stared at my phone and tried to pretend like nothing was happening. And I think that's probably part of how the blackmail operation worked, was just kind of a guilty by association. And so it could be that Donald Trump's name is just in the files enough that he would also like to just move on from it. All this is speculative, and none of us know. Enrique Skoda, what would you do? I would put it all out there, and I would figure out how I would need to protect myself, because I think at the end of the day, if you're the president of the United States of America, you know, you can wage war with the power structures, and you can win those fights. And some of these, I think, are important to actually clear out. And so in this one, I would not be brushing it under the rug. I would figure out, how is this a fight that I win? How do I have absolute information? How do we go out there and round up all the characters on the same day so that they can't come after me? And how do we actually uproot all this corruption? But Donald Trump, he doesn't want to touch it. Or at a minimum, they don't want more transparency on the issue. He really wants to play his card of, hey, I said this isn't a problem, and so you guys, you can trust me on it. And let's roll this clip of Donald Trump addressing it, of which we got a couple.
Mr. President, I know you've urged people to move on, but I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled?
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. and I don't understand why it keeps going. I think, well, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
I mean, it's just quite a spin. I don't even understand why anyone's interested in it. And the only people that are keeping this going is he's trying to pretend like it's every other storyline where it's just CNN who's accusing him of some nonsense. And so it's just fake news. Except this storyline didn't come from CNN. It came from the Twitter people. It came from the podcasters. It came from, generally speaking, the people that criticize the government and seem to get these storylines right, or sometimes even the conspiracy theories. I mean, the idea that, hey, this storyline's not even interesting, everyone's fascinated by it. Everyone is fascinated by how does this guy hang out with all these people, have all this wealth, turn out to be in trouble for being a pedophile, government loses files out of the home. At first, he gets just a totally nothing charge, and then he gets in trouble once the internet finds out about it. He somehow dies in his prison cell, and all the cameras go out. But Donald Trump can't even figure out why this is interesting. And by the way, the only people that want to keep this storyline going, it's the fake news that just criticizes me over everything. And that's kind of his new spin on it, is he wants to pretend like this is like the Russia hoax, where the Democrats, they just invented it. And this storyline did not come from the Democrats. If anything, you guys have all seen that footage that I think it was the NBC or MSNBC anchor who had the whole storyline, and then she was just pissed that she didn't get credit for actually doing the journalism on it because they told her that it needed to be brushed under the rug. This was the people outside of power, outside of the institutions, going, what the hell is government doing? This is horrible. This was not the Democrats. The Democrats cooked up the Russia collusion story. But can you sell this one to me or explain to me? So what, the Obama administration and others cooked up some fake story? The Clintons, the people who are the most, have their fingers pointed at them the most over this, they just cooked up this storyline so that other Republicans would tease it. And then you would say, hey, there's nothing here. I mean, that's like you're playing 60 chess. They're playing 90 chess of concocting a story to get everyone excited about it. For you to go, hey, I have actual work to do, and this is a nonsense storyline, for everyone then to be upset at you for brushing it under the rug. I mean, maybe that's possible, but then have the transparency and put out everything that you have. And also go back in time and not have Pam Bondi going, this is horrible stuff, and we're going to make it available. All right, here is another clip where he specifically asked if his name came up, and let's watch this one.
Mr. President, your daughter-in-law said that there should be transparency in the Epstein case. Do you agree with her, sir?
The Attorney General's handled that very well. She's really done a very good job, and I think that when you look at it, you'll understand that. I would like to see that also, but I think the Attorney General, the credibility is very important, and you want credible evidence for something like that, and I think the Attorney General has handled it very well.
How many more states? The Attorney General briefed you on the DOJ and FBI's review, the findings of that review. The Attorney General briefed you on
that. What? On the
DOJ and FBI
On what?
Review.
On what subject?
Epstein. Okay. On Epstein, of the review of the files. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
A very quick briefing.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
So he's half. You know what I mean? He's doing his half in, half out thing of, I had a short briefing. I haven't seen all of it. Pam Bondi's credible. I'm leaving it up to Pam. She explained to me that there's nothing credible here. I guess that's a decent way of hedging your bet of going, well, Pam Bondi didn't, like, if it comes out down the line, Pam Bondi didn't present that information to me. And of course I would put that out there, but explain to me this theory that this came from the Obamas, Clinton, and Comey. I mean, they were not the ones that wanted to look into this storyline. This was a storyline that kind of came from the internet and made all those characters look bad. They didn't initiate it. I mean, when it came to calling Donald Trump a Russian asset, there was a very clear motivation in doing so. And then there was a clear trail of evidence of the fact that they fabricated the entire story. But I just, in terms of this new, if you want to accept this from Donald Trump, of that the Clintons, the Obamas, the Comeys, the entire apparatus that's always been working against Donald Trump and cooked up the entire Russia hoax, they're also selling you on the Epstein hoax. Like, firstly, what's the evidence of them creating the storyline? Why did they do that? And then if they were interested in, why did they never pursue it? And how did it exist only to affect Donald Trump? And if that was true, that they just made it up, why weren't they going for the whole time that Donald Trump was in on this racket? And look at these pictures of, it seems like they wanted this thing pushed under the rug as much as the next guy. All right, let's move on to our next story. But let's take a couple of comments. Or wait, let's see if there was anything left on the Epstein before we pivot to our next topic. Oh, yeah. One more thing left on the Epstein, which is interesting, because now as Donald Trump walks away from this, it feels like a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where now the Democrats are able to pick up he's just handing it to the Dems. This was kind of a Republican storyline. Maybe he only mentioned it once in one interview that he was going to delve into it, but I think it was part of the excitement for Donald Trump was going after the deep state, cleaning up the swamp. We were hoping for a prosecution of Fauci. I don't think that's happening. We were hoping that they would look into January 6th, Ray Epps, etc. We were also hoping that they would go after the deep state for what they did to Donald Trump, which I guess Donald Trump has enough political power, and Brennan, Comey, and the other people who did Russia collusion, along with Adam Schiff, are so not powerful against the Republican apparatus right now that they can take those pieces off the field and go after them. The Schiff thing, once again, if you're interested in cleaning up corruption, the Epstein storyline seems juicier. But like, yeah, Schiff was a scumbag in the way he went after Donald Trump. And if he wasn't keeping his house in order enough that he engaged in mortgage fraud, like, God bless going after your political enemies. But this is just the bigger and juicier storyline. And now he's just kind of leaving these cards for the Democrats to pick up. It's a winning hand. The entire country is fascinated by this. The entire country doesn't want it. And at a minimum, they'd at least like a better lie as to why there's nothing to see here, folks. And so I'm going to play two videos of just role player Democrats in Congress. Never heard of these people. They're not even doing a great job with the storyline, and they're working in their own bullshit about how Donald Trump lied to you about tariffs. About inflation and other topics. So they're just kind of working this into a broader pitch of Donald Trump's a liar, and here's all the things that he's lying about. But the Epstein storyline is a winning storyline for public interest and for cleaning up corruption in government. And now you're just leaving it to the Democrats to basically take it over. All right, let's roll a couple clips here.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Donald Trump, when he campaigned, promised on day one he would end inflation and lower costs. Donald Trump lied to the American people because we now know that inflation has continued to increase under his policies and that of Republicans. The most recent inflation report shows that inflation increased to 2.7% above expectations, and core CPI increased to 2.9%. We call on Trump and Republicans to focus on lowering costs instead of things like the big ugly bill that are kicking millions of people off health care. I've also noticed that there's been an uptick in activity around the Epstein files recently. I just want to remind the American people that in February of this year, Attorney General Pam Bondi acknowledged the existence of Jeffrey Epstein's client list. In fact, she said that Jeffrey Epstein's client list is, quote, sitting on my desk right now. Where is that client list? What is Attorney General Pam Bondi hiding? She needs to release the Epstein files as soon as possible. I talked about the Epstein files under the Biden administration. I'm talking about it under the Trump administration. This is a case of the powerful protecting the powerful. We need to have those files released. I also note that
just handing this one to the Democrats. And then similarly, and this one's interesting, We're not going to play that much of it because it's a longer video, and I will give you guys some of the context. But essentially, there was a motion in Congress, I think, to release all the Epstein files, and it got voted down by the Republicans. Now, it got voted down for procedure reasons, and it was the goofy thing where they were trying to attach that to some crypto bill, and so it had no place. And we all agree, pass bills one thing at a time. There's no reason to group them together. And usually when you're grouping them together, it's only because you're trying to sneak some massive spending to some private interest, and it's always a way of screwing us. This one time they tried to do that exact same move, but in a way that would benefit us. I don't know why it was at this crypto hearing. I'm going to assume it was just the next thing that was going on, and so some people were trying to work it in. And so the one time that they were trying to use that sneaky move of sneaking something in that has nothing to do with the other stuff, it got voted down for the procedure reason of, hey, there's no reason for this to be here. Like I said, we are not going to play the full clip, but here is in Congress, basically vetoing releasing all the Epstein files. Here we go.
Noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have another amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 50 to H.R. 3633 offered by Representative Khanna, which would require the Attorney General to preserve and release any records related to Jeffrey Epstein. Madam Chair, on February 21st, 2025, President Trump's own Attorney General, Pam Bondi, said on Fox News, the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk.
Let it play for a minute because it gets repetitive,
right now,
but it does get voted
review,
down.
end quote. Kash Patel, Trump's FBI director, said during his confirmation hearing that he would do everything, if confirmed, to make sure the American people knew, quote, the full weight of what happened, end quote. Patel, who now leads the FBI, said on the Benny Johnson show that the FBI was hiding the Epstein client list. Donald Trump Jr., the president's own son, tweeted out, and I quote, show us all the Epstein client list right now. Why would anyone protect those scumbags? Ask yourselves this question, and then the answer becomes very apparent, end quote. And now, forgive me, but suddenly these same people are telling us there's nothing to see here. Trump is posting that we should all just move on. Well, I want to know what the hell is in these files. And I think we all want to know why Trump is suddenly changing his tune and is so desperate to sweep this under the rug. But you know what? This also gets at his credibility. This is about trust.
I just got to put, how often do you agree with Democrats? Doesn't it just hurt your soul that you're listening to Democrats and going, yeah, shit, I think I agree with them on this one.
Republicans said, trust us, vote for us, and we will release these files. And here we are. They are backtracking. They said they aren't going to cut Medicaid, and they did. They said they wouldn't add to the deficit and debt.
There you go. It's now just in the grouping of other things you don't agree with to showcase the fact that Donald Trump's a liar. But it seems like he's handing them a pretty valid talking point. And if you guys want to go watch this entire clip, you can see that it gets voted down. With that said, we got good people such as Thomas Massey working on the case. We all deserve to know what's in the Epstein's files, who's implicated, and how deep this corruption goes. Americans were promised justice and transparency. We're introducing a discharge petition to force a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives on releasing the complete files. So it might be revisited. All right, that is enough of this topic. Let's get into tariffs. But before we do, let's thank our last show sponsor for today, which is FenixAmmo.com. Guys, we all hate the deep state. We all hate the war machine, but we do like our bullets. And that's why I'm letting you know about FenixAmmo.com, the place that you can go buy bullets from that will not sell to the United States government. And that's how you know that these are high quality, because they're not getting just fine government contracts where they can jack up their prices and know that the government's going to buy it no matter what. No, they're relying on the consumers like you. So, you know, if you live in areas where you're allowed to stock up on bullets, you're of age, you're going to be responsible, you go to FenixAmmo.com and you can go stock up. Bags of bullets, people. All right, let's take a couple of comments, and then we'll get into some of the tariff stuff. And I'm reminded now, as it's 54 minutes into the show, that this is why I got to podcast more regularly, so that we can break it up. We can have it more digestible. We could be doing one topic for like 25 minutes with more stupidity in it, as opposed to me sitting down all week and dumping topics into a document and then having to take a whole bunch of Adderall to then sort through it. I should just go live. All right. Anyways, couple of comments. Mangalls. It shouldn't hurt your soul. They're only doing this because it's politically beneficial. They legit don't care. I agree with you. But the point is, you're kind of just giving them winning cards for no reason. Mangals, they will give this speech and go order a 9-year-old boy later that same day. I shouldn't be laughing at that. I agree with you. It could be that just whoever's not in power, whatever side is not in power, it can always just basically try and get to power by criticizing the people in power who are, brushing these storylines under the rug. John Popick, Clinton made it up, but made sure to go to the island over 20 times to really sell the hoax. There you go. Trump's second go-around of cleaning up the swamp is going worse, and it's only been 6 months. I agree with all of that. Void Link, Clinton driven past funeral home. Let's stop in there and do a couple of cold ones. All right. Now, tariffs. I think I already gave the broad stroke. Trump sent out a bunch of letters, and we will see what actually happens. Are other countries going to fight back? Are other countries going to jack up their tariffs? Are they going to lower their tariffs? If they lower the tariffs, is that going to be a win? Does Donald Trump just want tariffs no matter what because he sees it as a way of making more revenue? Does the most ideal situation come into play of that we're making so much money off of tariffs that they can actually save you money on your income taxes? I guess we're going to have to see how some of this actually plays out. What will the actual impact be of the tariffs? I guess at the moment we haven't seen extreme inflation, which people are saying, hey, look, this is a win. You guys said prices were going to go up, but I also don't know how many tariffs we had, how long they were in for, or how this is actually going to affect supply lines, or how quickly Americans can actually ramp up production. These are all questions that are over my head, and we've done multiple episodes on why, from my general understanding of economics, I think the tariffs are a bad policy, because if you can have goods for cheaper, then it's just a new opportunity over here to make money off of the raw goods that you're able to acquire for cheaper. A lot of the audience doesn't agree with me, and at this point, I guess we will see how it plays out. On the topic, though, of how they will play out, so firstly, in terms of exploring whether or not other governments are going to retaliate, or because like I said, Donald Trump, he's gambling aggressively. He just sent out the letters. He said, here are the new terms. And in his head, it's like, I struck Iran and that's done. You don't even have to think about that anymore. I'm telling you it's done. I'm telling you totally obliterated. Same here. Sent out the letters. It's done. Or at least I think that's kind of the way he's been selling it. But anyways, this was from the Wall Street Journal. And I'm tiring myself out here. But we can give, I think this is worth reading because at least this explores the EU and the options that they have for fighting back. And which is not to say that they will. We're just kind of exploring what might happen here. EU officials on Monday unveiled the list after Trump's latest tariff threat over the weekend, revived a debate on the bloc over whether it should fight back and how forcefully if the two sides can't reach a deal. The EU in April froze an initial package of retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. after Trump said he would limit blanket tariffs on most countries to 10% for 90 days. The new EU list circulated to the bloc's 27 member states and viewed by the Wall Street Journal covers American imports that were together valued at roughly $84 billion last year. The list covers about $77 billion worth of industrial imports, including aircraft machinery, automotive products, and blah, 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 blah. European officials are debating what would trigger those tariffs and whether to go further by preparing additional measures that could be levies or other restrictions on American services, not just physical goods. The EU's approach to U.S. tariffs is getting renewed attention this week after Trump sent a letter to the bloc threatening to impose 30% tariffs. The move surprised EU officials who thought they were close to a preliminary agreement with the U.S. Trump on Monday said the deals are already made. The letters are the deals. There are no deals to make. He added the recipients of this letters would like to do a different kind of deal, and we're always open to talk, including to Europe. EU trade chief, I'm just trying to look at what the other threats were, which I think were lower. One way to demonstrate the bloc's power, some European officials argue, is through untested legal. No, I didn't want to read that. All right, anyways, it's still on the table whether or not these other people are going to try and take measures back. This was another article. Some importers look to path to bend the rules. I'm not going to read the article, but it just kind of had me thinking about how sometimes the wealthiest people in this country, they have the best access to tax planners, and they can figure out how to receive their income in a way that they don't have to pay as many taxes. And I'm going to guess that if the tariffs end up here long term, one, we said that some industries are going to have the benefit of being able to actually lobby Donald Trump and getting carve out for their industries. We're already starting to see that with deportations. And we saw it temporarily for steel imports for the car, for like General Motors, that they might get an exception so that things aren't double tariffed. I think you're also going to see that companies are going to figure out ways to get around the tariffs. They're going to slap just like random things that make no sense on items so that they can re-clarify the items. And you might find that small businesses are crushed more than larger industry players, because larger industry players have more lawyers that they can more easily, for one, try and figure out the workarounds, and then actually try and fight the government on that their workarounds are legitimate, and that's why these items should be reclassified as things that should not be tariffed. Lastly, there were big claims about the money that's already been coming in from the tariffs, and that the tariffs, hey, everyone's worried about the budget, but we're going to make all this money from the tariffs. So I read this from the Wall Street Journal, and I'm kind of tiring myself out here. So I'll just give you guys the summary. You can go look this one up about the tariffs budget surplus. Essentially what they were saying is that this is usually a pretty good month for government revenue. And so the current tariffs coming in might be overstated, as that this month is always a good month for that. I can read the one line. Let's go. This could stand some parsing. Mr. Bessent knows, but would rather not say that June is one of Treasury's biggest revenue month of the year. That's because it's a month when companies and individuals file their quarterly estimated tax payments. Before the Biden presidency spending surge, the U.S. would sometimes run surpluses in such months. Looking back to October, in the first 9 months of the fiscal 2025, the U.S. has run a $1.3 trillion deficit. Outlays are running $318 billion higher than last fiscal year, and that figure would be even bigger if not for some accounting changes. In other words, the budget deficit is still growing despite the tariffs and buoyant receipts from individual income taxes. Individual income tax revenue is $51 billion higher, blah, blah. All right, we read enough. All right, I think I had one more topic that I wanted to cover. Ukraine. I think I spoke about this enough at the beginning of the show. So Donald Trump, like I said, I think Putin's pissed him off enough that his newest strategy is that he's got to make this war more costly from Putin so that Putin will actually come to the table and I guess be invested in peace. I don't know who's more at fault here. Is it Putin or is it Zelensky? Is Zelensky actually willing to give up some of the land so that they can have peace? Which I don't know at this moment. Where we're at is there's no new spending from the United States that's been allocated for the Ukraine. However, and I remember this from the Biden administration, I believe we can just give them military gear that's already been like purchased and is abroad, and that's not considered to be new spending. And so I think Donald Trump's doing that. The problem is, you know, I think we're sending them like the Patriot missiles that at first the Pentagon didn't want to send over there because they're like, we're really depleting our stockpile and we kind of need these. And so the newest thing is that NATO is apparently going to be paying us for the stuff that we're sending over there. NATO's actually going to be spending their fair share. And it's just that people actually need this military gear and there's nowhere else that they can buy it. As to whether or not that will actually be getting paid for by NATO and not by us, and whether or not we're actually just depleting our own stockpiles, all of that remains to be seen. But it does seem like we're escalating and staying in the war. So here is Trump threatens very severe tariffs against Russia if no Ukraine deal within 50 days. And he loves that. 50 days, it's a good number. I'm throwing it out there. They only got 50 days. I know I don't usually keep to my own deadlines, but it sounds nice. 50 sounds good. We're going with 50. I know in the past I said 90 and then I walked away, but 50, good day. And so now they're trying to throw tariffs on Russia, which I thought was interesting. So I'm like, we've been at fake war with these people forever, and we're still buying things from them. I mean, I can understand just going, hey, these people invaded Ukraine. We can't. So I was curious. I was like, we must be buying things from them that we really need. And so I looked to Gronk once again, and apparently the things that we really need that we're purchasing from them are fertilizers, non-ferrous metals, inorganic chemicals, precious stones and minerals, metals, enriched uranium and nuclear equipment, wood and machinery. And I don't know how easily we can just be getting these things from other locations. And it's interesting that we can get along with these people while we're fighting these people. While they're doing the worst thing in the world, when it comes to things that we need, we're going to continue to purchase from them. There's something that's a little bit cartoonish there. But I did just think, like, if we're already just going to continue to get along with them, it must be on things that we really need. And so now Donald Trump is threatening very severe tariffs. And I'm not sure that tariffs on base goods that you can't easily duplicate are a win, even for people that love the tariffs. I think there's some, like the precious minerals from China. You know, how many things need that in order to continue to be in business? And can you even do it here? And on that note, here is Rand Paul commenting on these tariffs.
The Lindsey Graham bill is one of the most dangerous bills ever to come before the Senate. It allows for 500% tariffs on anybody who buys oil and gas with Russia. Now, the Hawks in the Senate in both parties beat their chest and say, well, we will tell them what to do. But what do you think China's response will be when we tell them not to buy oil and gas from Russia? They're just going to say, we don't care, and we're going to continue. But what?
I just want to pause because that's really interesting to me. Off the bat, at the beginning of the Ukraine war, I had said it was a bit of a gamble of trying to basically force the Germany, China, and India to get our back. China and India didn't get our back. They decided, hey, we're going to continue to trade with Russia. And I think it was basically over right then and there. We gambled and lost because it wasn't going to be the entire world ganged up on Russia, and Russia was going to continue to be able to make its money by sending natural gas to both China and to India. At one point in time, Gene Epstein pointed out, because I think I was wrong in saying, Jesus, I think oil costs are going to go up because we're taking all this natural gas off the table. And Gene pointed out that no, because they're still able to sell to China and Russia, that supply still exists. And so since they're supplying there, it's like the overall supply still exists. So it's actually not going to have any effect on price, versus if they could not sell it at all and you were to take that supply completely off the table, then I guess there would be an increase in price unless it ended up black market. I'd have to go back and re-ask Gene because that was from like 3 years ago. But anyways, let's continue with Rand Paul explaining why this is a mistake to now be tariffing Russia.
What happens when we have a 500% tariff on China? No more trade with China. It'll be an immediate cessation of trade. But it's not just China. India buys a lot of oil and gas. So does Turkey. They're the top three purchases. Are we really going to have an embargo on India and on Turkey as well? Half of the EU buys oil and gas from Russia. Many of them can't immediately shift. So it's a really, really terrible bill, but built on this authority, this idea of that tariffs can be a good thing for trade, but tariffs can also be very disruptive.
What about President Trump's 100% tariffs on
That's along
Russia?
the same lines. He was looking at the Lindsey Graham bill and saying, maybe we don't need Lindsey Graham's bill, we'll do 100%. 100% is essentially prohibitive. We already have, like on China, I think it's about a 30% tariff now. It's hard to tell because it changes from day to day. But you have a 30% tariff, and then you add to it a 100% tariff. What do you think that means? No trade with China. And most people think that if you abruptly aid with
All right. And then this is what Trump to send 300 million weapons to Ukraine, drawn from Pentagon reserves. There was concerns that we actually need that gear. And I don't know why I even kept these here. All right, that's it. That's our show. Thanks for hanging out. We did a pretty good recap of everything that was going on. I got a forum wondering, are things getting expensive yet? And the answer is, it's not crazy yet. I think inflation's up, what was the number, about like 2%? But no, I don't think anything's crazy yet. And I think people that are into tariffs are that's their prime argument, is that for all the yelling and hollering, it doesn't seem like we've run out of supplies. But I don't know enough about supply lines or any of these things, how long the tariffs were there for the last time, how they were implemented, because it seemed like they were kind of on and off again. So I don't know what now having 30% tariffs across the board to every country, what that looks like. So the answer is I don't have an answer for you. But no, I don't think anything's gotten insanely expensive yet. John Popick, another great one, Mr. Bernstein. Thank you, sir. Jacob Maslin saying, great job, Rob. I appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. That is our show. Go to porchtour.com. Get your Porch Tour tickets. Still got like 30 of them left. California run. There's a lot of porches. Come hang out. Come pay tribute to the porch. Come porch with me. And I already listed them off. Porchtour.com. That's our show. Be back next week for another episode. Also, check out my Zero Hedge podcast if you haven't already. I just did an incredible episode about the IMF trying to undermine Bitcoin. And then I will be doing a new episode with David Stockman on Friday So if you guys want more of the actual particulars on the tariffs, the deficit spending, Donald Trump trying to lower the interest rate, if you guys are interested in the financial topics and you want to actually hear from someone who actually understands it and can actually give you information, unlike what I do, you can check out my Zero Hedge podcast, which will be up on Friday with David Stockman. Later, everybody.